We've got the NFL draft coming up in a few weeks, and I got my buddy Doug Moore here joining me quick to answer a couple questions. Uh, It'll just be like some general questions here. So I think the first question I'll ask you, Doug, is Tennessee Titans sitting number one on the clock, and certainly three possibilities they can go with. They got Joey Bosa, they got Laramie Tunsil, and they've got Jalen Ramsey as a possibility. I would say is maybe the top three. So if you're the Titans, you're sitting there at number one, and you had to make a pick, which way do you think you're going to go, or which way do you think they're going to go?
Yeah, so I mean, if you can't get a trade, and obviously the Titans have made this very known, they're looking at all trade offers, and obviously something could happen between now and obviously draft night. But and I've said this before, especially on Twitter, I would say that the obvious pick for me, and this is looking at their depth, and obviously they have a lot of needs. But I would say the number one thing is offensive line help. They've done some things. They signed. Ben Jones from Houston this offseason. But you got a franchise quarterback that went down several times with a knee injury. Obviously, he took a lot of pressure. He took some sacks, and really you don't want to see that happen, especially to a rookie. Add up quickly over the years. So for me, Jalen Ramsey, Miles Jack, Joey Bosa, Laramie Tunsil, they're all great players. I think they're all worthy of number one consideration. But I got to go with Tunsil. He's clearly the number one tackle in this class. He can fit right in. He's got all the measurements, all the traits you want in a left tackle. He's arguably one of the safest prospects you can get while also being one of the best. And Tennessee's had some, not so good offensive line playing. They really need to bump it up. They can, with picking Tunsil, they can go and move, Taylor Lewan over to right tackle. Obviously, they made some moves inside. Obviously, that still needs to be done, their interior offensive line. But you can get two tackles that can cover outside, especially after you spent, went and got DeMarco Murray, who's they want to treat him as a bell cow running back. You want to obviously improve your offensive line the best you can, especially with a young franchise quarterback and Marcus Mariota, and obviously, again, with DeMarco Murray. I'd say that the number one pick for the Titans would have to be Tunsil, just simply because, you got to defend your quarterback. You got to protect him. But all those players are definitely worthy of number one pick consideration.
And that definitely sounds to be the kind of the consensus right now that they'll go Tunsil, and certainly not a bad way to go because, like you said, it's all about protecting Mariota, and you take him and bookend him with Lewan. All of a sudden, you're starting to surround Mariota with talent and protection. So definitely a good way it could go. And speaking of the Titans, I want to get your opinion too quick on the news that was reported earlier today. Apparently, we found out the actual trade details from last year when the Eagles were looking to move up to number 2, and reportedly Chip Kelly offered a first and a second in 2015, a first in 2016, any quarterback on the roster, and any defensive player on the roster, which we can assume would probably be Fletcher Cox. So what do you think about that? Like, we knew Chip Kelly was nuts.
Yeah.
But we didn't think he was even going to be this nuts to pretty much, kind of bet the farm on Marcus Mariota, even knowing the love fest he had for him going into the draft.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. You got this Chip Kelly, Oregon connection. Marcus Mariota, obviously, probably one of the best, if not the best, quarterbacks he had at Oregon. And we saw him last year when he had roster control. He was signing players left and right. He traded for I can't think of his name off the top of my head, the linebacker from Buffalo.
Kiko Alonso.
Kiko Alonso. But he traded him. He traded away LaShawn McCoy for him. And obviously he was an Oregon player. It's not shocking. We heard something similar to this, during draft time and after it. But to hear it actually be the case, it's crazy. And I've often said this: quarterback is often the most overrated position in all sports, or at least the most valued, and for good reason at least. But it's crazy how much people will go with trying to get a quarterback, and especially Mario, very very talented and all that, and it certainly would have fit Chip Kelly's system. But I think the Eagles are pretty happy that it didn't happen, because that's betting your future, and we saw that with Washington a couple years ago when they traded for Robert Griffin III, and while they still obviously won the division last year, they certainly traded a lot to get him when they trade up with the Rams to get him. So it's crazy, but it's not Chip Kelly crazy, because we've seen worse from him, I think, and this isn't unexpected.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, it just goes to show how crazy draft season can be, and with about a little over a month to go, definitely excited to see what happens coming up. So thanks for the time, Doug. It was good talking to you, my friend.
My pleasure, man. I'm glad to be on. I appreciate you having me on. It's I know it's a short time, but it's still fun to talk about football with anybody, and these aren't questions where it's like, oh, who's your favorite prospect in the draft? Obviously these are questions that have multiple answers to them. So, but thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, bud.
But have a great rest of your night, and I know your bracket's busted just like mine, but let's hope that the draft goes a little bit better.
Absolutely.